Ukrainian forces have recaptured key positions near Stepnohirsk in the Zaporizhia region. A series of successful offensive operations were carried out by special forces from the main intelligence directorate. The soldiers not only significantly improved their tactical position, but also destroyed Russian army assault groups at the front lines, amounting to dozens of occupiers. Strikes on the enemy's logistics and communication hubs made their assaults in this direction impossible.
These active operations were carried out in close coordination with other units of the Defense Intelligence and the Ukrainian Defense Forces. They made it possible to establish a stable foothold for the subsequent clearing of the settlement and the final destruction of the enemy. The goal of the Ukrainian defenders remains to eliminate the threat of an enemy breakthrough in the vicinity of Zaporizhia. The operation's ongoing. Viktor Tarkatachiuk, commander of the Special Unit Arten of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Specifically on the Huliaipol and Pokrovska bridgeheads, the defense forces have repelled attacks since the beginning of the day. Most of the attempts by Russian occupiers are to break through Ukrainian positions. Moreover, the defenders are not only holding the line steadfastly, but are also carrying out counterattacks. Military experts note that this is a positive development.
Counterattacks are being carried out in certain areas. This is the lowest level of offensive actions. While the forces of Ukraine's defense, units, and detachments are conducting these actions, but these are counterattacks, moving forward. As a rule, in those directions where it's necessary to stabilize the situation, I'm talking about north of Huliaipol, as well as at the junction of the three regions, Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, and Zaporizhia. Our units are managing to advance. And overall, in the first 2 months of this year, as we can see, the territory involved was about 400 square kilometers.
Border guards have shown what the city of Kostiantynivka in Donetsk region destroyed by the Russians looks like now. This city used to be an administrative center. The occupiers have almost completely destroyed it. The soldiers note that this is not just a record of destruction. It is evidence of the price being paid to hold this direction. Konstantin, let's go. An assault group of Russian occupiers tried to infiltrate in the fog. On the Pokrovsk section of the front, a combat ground robotic system eliminated them. The soldiers said that intelligence had advanced knowledge of the enemy's movement, so they sent the robotic system into an ambush. And as soon as the Russians got close, the operator of the system activated the combat module. The enemy infantry was eliminated.
Today, the enemy will probably have to change their plans because they were pushed back from the positions they were trying to fortify. It's quite possible that the way the situation develops will help us advance. I won't name the locations right now to certain lines, which in any case will at least complicate the actions of the Russian army, which will need to have the necessary resources to try to turn the situation in their favor. However, today, we see that the counterattacks by Ukraine's defense forces have worked as a tool to counter the Russian offensive.
Just in the past day, along the entire front line, the defense forces destroyed 3 Russian tanks, 5 armored fighting vehicles, 29 artillery systems, 1 multiple rocket launcher, 146 vehicles, and 886 Russian operational tactical drones. In addition, 1,070 Russian occupiers were eliminated yesterday as well. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total combat losses of Russia. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the number of troops has already exceeded 1,262,000.
Dennis Popovich, military observer, joins us. Dennis, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, it was not such a kind, but night shelling. It was serious today. Let's discuss this. They keep going. You know, we, the people living in Ukraine and Kyiv, thought there would be such attacks on the anniversary. And even on a day-to-day level, we discussed among ourselves whether it would happen or not. And here it is. What are they doing, Dennis, and why?
Well, not exactly on the anniversary, but it happened, yes. We can see that there were strikes on different cities. There were strikes on Kyiv, and especially on the outskirts of Kyiv. We saw strikes carried out on Kharkiv and the areas around Kharkiv. There was also a Shahed drone attack, a Shahed attack on Zaporizhia and Kryvyi Rih. Judging by where things were headed in the Kiev area, again, most likely their target is the energy infrastructure. although it's still unclear how effective their strike was. But we can see that, in particular, ballistic missiles are being used very actively against the capital. Why? Because they understand that Kiev is well protected, and they would like the strike to cause maximum damage. That's why they're using ballistic missiles against Kiev quite actively. Apparently, they tried to use Zircon missiles. It looks like they also tried to use KH-22 and KH-32 missiles. These are cruise missiles launched from Tu-22 and Tu-22M3 bombers. Again, the effect is unclear. That is, there were reports of damage in residential areas and also reports of casualties. But let's wait for the official statements about exactly how many missiles and munitions were used and what they managed to achieve. I can note for myself that this is the second strike of this kind, for some reason, because something similar, mostly around the outskirts of the capital, was observed last Sunday night.
Dennis, let's get back to the situation at the front, because we see that, well, intelligence had warned that there would be this massive shelling. And indeed, as my colleague Sakin said, we were expecting it on the 24th, although honestly, we don't really expect it. We would prefer these strikes not to happen at all. We understand that a lot also depends on the situation at the front. We can only imagine how much time they need to stockpile that many missiles and drones. Obviously, that's about a week. But let's get back to this topic. The villages of Maysky and Markov in the Kramatorsk direction remain under the control of Ukraine's defense forces, despite constant attacks by Russian occupiers. This was reported by the spokesperson for the Eastern Group of Forces, Hrgory Shapova. According to him, both settlements are located near the line of contact. However, Ukrainian units continue to hold their positions. Shapoval also noted that in the Kramatorsk sector, the Russians are conducting active assault operations. These are infantry groups of the occupiers who are coming under fire, while the Ukrainian Defense Forces units are controlling the situation and holding certain positions. In your opinion, based on your observations, can we say, with cautious optimism, that Ukraine has begun a counteroffensive?
No. Well, we can't say it's a counteroffensive. Not with optimism, nor without it. No, we don't have a counteroffensive. Especially when we're talking about the Kramatorsk sector. There, on the contrary, the enemy's trying to push forward. Our counterattacks are happening at the junction of three regions: Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, and possibly the Zaporizhia region. These counterattacks, as I've already said, and not just me, we've talked about this before. Repeated broadcasts to Friedman and on other platforms are aimed at improving the tactical situation and eliminating the enemy's infiltration group that has penetrated deep into our battle formations there.
Today marks 12 years of Crimea's occupation. We talk about this a lot. It's a recurring theme throughout our entire broadcast today. You know, against the backdrop of everything that's happening, this terrible, brazen criminal behavior by Russia and the negotiations, it's as if the topic of Crimea is fading into the background. Let's remember what happened. Do you think we'll actually live to see it? Justice? By military means or not by military means? How do you see it, Dennis? I hope that
we will be able to achieve justice. By the way, I want to emphasize that it was actually with the occupation of Crimea that the Russian-Ukrainian war began, 12 years ago. So we're talking about two stages of the Russian-Ukrainian war. First, the occupation of Crimea, and then the invasion of Donbass. That's the first stage, which lasted 8 years, and then the full-scale invasion, which is still ongoing. It started 4 years ago. In my opinion, the liberation of Crimea is only possible by military means. Even though we're talking about a diplomatic solution right now. Why do I think that? Because what was seized by force of arms, unfortunately, is very rarely returned through diplomacy and human history.
Yes, we do have such a tool as long-range sanctions. This is actually the most effective way to negotiate with the occupiers. We literally have just a couple of minutes left. Let's discuss something we've been seeing lately, also in other directions. What do you think? The situation has changed in the Kharkiv direction. They are hitting with missiles and drones, but it has become as calm as possible on the ground. What is this connected with? Is this our activity in relation to the Kursk region?
I would like to point out that yesterday there was a message from Flash that drones have started flying around Kharkov. Most likely, drones have started flying on fiber optics. FPV drones. This is a very disturbing message. Why? Because if a swarm can be used in these strikes on Kharkov, then of course there will be many more challenges for the people of Kharkov. An FPV drone can hunt individual people and specific vehicles, just like it happens in Kherson. To answer your question, in my opinion, Putin is now trying to focus on two directions. Those are the Zaporizhzhia direction, the southern section of the front, and of course the Donetsk region. Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Pokrovsk, Konstantinovka, and so on. So I think the reduction in activity in the Bakhmut direction is directly related to this situation. Specifically near Kharkov.